Hello, everybody. Good morning. This is your host, Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're going to talk about how practice makes permanent. Okay, good morning. Hello, how do you do, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Perspective Podcast. I think this one is pretty fun, but before I get into that, if you are in the Southern California area, I have officially started up doing philosophy workshops again. So if you are interested in that or any of the event projects I'm doing, you can go to my Instagram page at Jordan Tremaine _ and check out the different things I'm doing there. I'm trying to start up community discussions again, but we'll see where that goes because I haven't confirmed anything with a venue yet. But definitely doing the philosophy workshops, and I'm excited about that. So if you're in the area, it's third Tuesdays. So yeah, come and check it out. But we're going to talk today about something called practice makes permanent. And this is something, it's funny, I do some video shooting with a guy named Gil, and he says this a lot, and he contrasts it with the what I think is the much better known phrase "practice makes perfect," and he disagrees with that a lot, and I'm going to explain kind of what he says, and I agree with what he says, and it's, I think, a point to be careful about and to just kind of have in your mind for when you're trying to practice something or when you are getting good at something, whether or not it's intentional or unintentional. So the reasoning kind of goes like this, where practice does not make perfect, because sometimes you're not really aware of what you're practicing or what is the right thing to do in order to practice. More realistically, practice makes permanent. So whatever you practice, you get better at. And that doesn't mean you're going to perfect the thing you're trying to do. It means you're going to get really good at the thing that you are doing. This does happen in sports, where if you're like a runner and you're training a certain style of running or a run technique, but it's not the right technique, you're not going to get good at running. You're going to get really good at that bad running technique. And then that's what you're going to be good at because you practiced that, which I think is why it's so important to have a coach or a mentor that knows what they're doing, that can watch you and sort of tweak you so you don't end up practicing over and over and over the incorrect thing. I think that's kind of the point of teachers, to help you avoid this pitfall, or it's one of the main things that I think teachers can do to help people on their growth path. But this isn't just about sports. This is about literally everything. And I think what's interesting about this is you can look at it like, okay, from kind of the active, I'm thinking about it side, where I am going to be intentional about what I'm practicing, and I'm going to try my best to make sure what I'm practicing is good, even if it's a little harder than what I want it to be, because I want to get really good at the right thing. I don't want to get really good at the wrong thing. There's a kind of saying in self-help or like business where it would be awful for you to spend all this time climbing up this ladder and working to get to the top only to realize that the ladder is leaned up against the wrong building. And I think that's kind of what this is saying with practice makes permanent, where don't do a lot of work in the wrong direction. It doesn't matter that you drove 200 miles if you were supposed to drive north instead of south. Now you're 400 miles off, even though you did a lot of work. I think a lot of times there's a confusion between work and progress. Just because you did a lot of work doesn't mean you made any progress. You could even have made, like I said with the driving thing, negative progress. You could have gone backwards. And I think it's important to, before we embark on a journey to get better, before we start practicing, before we go on the road trip, that we check our map, that we at least have some idea of what we're trying to get to. I don't think at the beginning we can always know exactly what to do or be experts in how to get better, but we can sit and think about, okay, what is my goal? And as clear as I can, how can I define my goal? And then once I have my goal defined, how can I point myself in a direction that's moving towards that goal? How can I make an efficient path to that goal? And if we don't do that, I think we're more prone to doing something that is not the best or that's counterproductive. And we're going to end up getting good at that. And we can lay down patterns or habits or belief sets inside of us that are very counterproductive. And it doesn't mean we had bad intentions. It doesn't mean we wanted to be good at this, but that's what happened because that's what we practiced. So there's the active side of this where we can try and be intentional about what we do so that we get good at stuff that we intend to get good at. But also, I think very interesting is the kind of flip side to that, which is the unintentional side, where there's a lot of stuff we do on a regular basis that we're not really like practicing on purpose. There's passive-aggressive behaviors that we adopt, or we ignore things that are difficult. We procrastinate. We do different things that may not be the best for us, and we're not really doing it actively. We're not trying to practice this thing, but we end up practicing it because we do it all the time. And by practice, I don't necessarily mean it's in your schedule and you show up to the gym and you do your reps and you go home. Like, that's in the intentional side of practice. But there's a lot of unintentional practice where you do something on a regular basis or fairly often and you're not really intentionally doing it. And that can become something you get better and better at. And it may not be what you want to get better at. So like procrastinating, like I said before. Every time you procrastinate, you practice procrastination. You get better at procrastination. And if that's something that doesn't bother you or that you want to do that, and some people think they work better under pressure and stuff like that, I'm not telling you what to practice and what not to practice. I'm saying that every time you do something, you get better at it. And if you don't want to be a procrastinator, then you need to stop procrastinating. You're headed in a way where you're getting better at something that you don't want to get better at. But on the flip side, every time you decide not to procrastinate and do something ahead of time, you get better at doing stuff ahead of time. Every time you show up somewhere on time, you get better at being punctual. And you do it enough to where it's a habit. You do it enough to where that's the normal thing. That's the permanent thing because you practiced it. Because practice makes permanent. If you're constantly showing up late, then you will get better and better at being late. And you'll probably end up being later and later and later. And first you were only 5 minutes late. But what's the difference between 5 minutes and 7 minutes? And then what's the difference between 7 minutes and 9 minutes? And pretty soon you're an hour late and it doesn't bother you because you've gotten better at it. You've practiced it over time. And the opposite is true, where you practice being on time, you practice being courteous, you practice being compassionate, you practice being diligent. These things are just like running and weightlifting and all the other sports exercises where the practice part is hard because you're not good at it, and that's why you're practicing it. But it's what makes you good at it, and depending on what you practice is what you're going to get good at. I think some people are intentional. They try to be intentional about what they practice. Some people accidentally practice stuff. And then there's others that I think we sometimes, I think, can fall into this trap of thinking that we're not good at anything or that certain people are not good at anything. And I think a lot of people are good at things, but it's like every time you practice, it's like an investment. And if you invest some in being late because you were late a couple of times, and you try to be on time and you invest some on being on time, and then okay, that felt good, so you invest some in being early, and then okay, well, now I'm tired because I went to the gym, so I invest some more in being late, and over time I'm putting all these investments in all these different baskets. I may not ever build up a substantial amount in any one investment. I might have some in being late, and some in being on time, and some in being early. And I think this happens to a lot of people where they get skills that conflict because they practice both ways. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that makes you well-rounded depending on what the skill is. But I would think that there's a lot of times where it's better to choose one or the other and try to get really good at it, and to be intentional. I think the more we can be intentional and execute on our intentionality, and that's in whatever direction you want. If it's to be more artistic, if it's to be more patient, if it's to learn how to be more flexible and stretch more. Like, whatever you think is going to make your life better or make you happier or contribute to the world more, like, think about it and then decide, and then try and go after that. Try and practice that. And if down, 2 months, 5 months, a year down the road, you realize that maybe that wasn't the best way to go about it, or you were wrong about some things, or the way you want to be has changed, then just recalibrate and take a moment, step back, and do the exercise again and say, okay, let me try this again. Where do I want to be? And if it's different, then head in a different direction. That's okay. I think that's fine. And I think that's how we become interesting people, where we change over time, our desires change over time, but we're always trying to grow. But I am making this episode to caution that growth will always happen, even if you're not being intentional about it. You can grow in ways you don't expect, and you can grow in ways that are not good for you because you're practicing them, because you are feeding those flames, because you're watering those plants. Like I was talking about in the Your Mind is a Garden episode a while ago. Whatever you plant in your garden is what's going to grow. Whatever you put water on and whatever you take care of is going to grow. Whatever you practice is going to get better. And you can grow flowers, you can grow vegetables, you can grow fruits, you can grow weeds, you can grow all types of whatever. And not all of it is good. Not all of it is beneficial to the other plants in your garden. Some plants don't do well next to each other. And if you try to grow both of them, one's going to kill the other one. So be careful in what you practice. I know sometimes it's very difficult. Like positivity can be very difficult. Some people have minds that have negative thoughts all the time, and it's really hard to not have those thoughts. I sympathize with that a lot, and I'm not saying that you can just snap your fingers and start practicing being this awesome person that every self-help book writes about like overnight. I'm saying it's worth it to try and practice. It's worth it to fail and do it poorly for a long time, because you're slowly getting in more practice in the direction you want to get. Failing is not a bad thing. Like, if you've ever played a sport, practice is all about pushing you till you fail, and then repeating that over and over and over and over till you stop failing. And so if you've ever practiced sports at a high level, it's all about finding failure. That's how you get better, and not giving up once you find it. Finding it, failing, looking at it, saying, okay, why did I fail? How did I fail? And how can I do something different the next time so I can get just a little bit farther? You move inch by inch by inch by inch until you're a much better player at the game. And I think that's the same in every arena, to where if you give up, or if you put certain mentalities in your head that are self-defeating, then it's going to be really hard. But everything that exists that's really ingrained in you, like some people, they just stretch all the time naturally. And I think that's because when they were younger, they did a lot of stretching, and now it just feels good for them to stretch. Some people think really positively. That's not something that, some people are positive and some people are negative. People that are positive practice being positive. And yes, they may have had the privilege of growing up in a more positive setting, but they had to choose to think positive thoughts. They had to choose to cultivate this mindset. And I'm not saying that it's easy for everybody. This stuff is hard for most people. This is very hard, but I want to stress that hard doesn't mean impossible, and hard doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. If it's something you want, or it's something you value, then go and get it. Normally stuff that's valuable is expensive, so you have to pay for it. If this thing is valuable for you, then pay for it. Then save your money and pay for it. Practice and get the skill. Be disciplined and do the thing. Which is, actually this goes a lot with what I talked about last week with the want, not want, where I want to put this podcast out. And last week I was like not in a good place. And it took me, like if you listen to last week's episode, it took me like 10 hours to record this podcast. And it was not fun that day, and it was very difficult, but I managed to get through that, and I managed to do what I set out to do, which is make one podcast a week. And the reason why that's so important to me is because I want to practice doing the consistent thing. I want to have this to where this comes out every week, period, no ifs, ands, or buts. It teaches me a lot of different sub-skills under that, which is like doing what I said I was going to do, being consistent, having commitments, being able to produce a good product on a regular basis. I don't think a lot of people realize what it takes to produce at a certain level consistently, like to be in the NBA or to have a job where you're expected to perform at a certain level consistently. It's really difficult. There's a lot of people who can do a really good job every once in a while, but it takes a really strong person, I think, to do a good job every day and to show up every day and do that good job. And so I appreciate all the people that are doing that have practiced that have those skills like diligence and commitment and things like that. Those things are hard and they take a lot of practice. I have failed at commitment a lot, like throughout my life, where I said I was going to do something and I didn't do it. And the way I've gotten good at honoring commitments is if I said I was going to do something and I didn't do it, I went back and did it. So there's some times where it's like, okay, I'm going to go ride my bike today, and it's Saturday. And I don't, because I'm feeling icky or I forget or something like that. So Sunday, even if I had plans on Sunday, I got to cancel those plans so I can go ride my bike because I said I was going to ride my bike. And now I'm decent at cycling because I try to practice that even if I don't do it perfectly. There's days where I'm like, oh, I'm going to go ride 100 miles. And then I ride 20 miles and I feel like I'm going to throw up. So then I try to ride a little bit more, but I end up only riding like 35, 40 miles. But I went out anyways, even though I didn't feel good. And that's like how I build commitment over time. And I think that's part of what it means to do something on a regular basis, what it means to wake up and go to work every day. Because I know that takes a commitment. And that's hard a lot of the time for a lot of people. So I hope you guys, this is sparking your mind to think about things that in your mind are good for you and places that you want to grow. Like maybe you want to be a good cook. Maybe you want to be a more patient person. Maybe you want to, I don't know, be better with animals. Whatever the thing is, I hope it's setting a path in your mind to think like, okay, how can I get good at this? No matter what it is, there's things that I can do to get better, and I can practice those things. And then also, what am I doing kind of absent-mindedly that I'm like leading myself in a way that's not so good? What am I doing that is kind of self-defeating that I can think about and try to practice little things and slowly over time get better at so that I can live a life that I'm satisfied with? I caution you not to do these things to satisfy other people or to look good or to put out an image into the world that you're successful or something. I'm talking about these things so that you can live the life that you want, that you can be somebody that you're proud of and that you have confidence in. And so what is the things that you want to do? What are your dreams? What are your goals? And what are your aspirations? And how can you get there? If it takes 10 years or 40 years, if some days are harder than others, if you fail sometimes, if you fail all the time, those things are all okay. But I think it's important to try and do the things that fulfill you. So, whatever kind of day that you're having, I hope this is a real day. I hope that you're able to take account of who you really are and be okay with that person, or move more towards being okay with that person. It's okay that we're not perfect people. It's okay that we've done things we're not proud of. And I think that acknowledging who we really are can help us grow a lot. So I hope that you had a real day. And I hope this concept of practice makes permanent, which is often confused with practice makes perfect, but it is not that. This concept of practice makes permanent. I hope that it turns into a good conversation for you somewhere down the road. Thank you, and I'll see you guys later.